Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to lesson 8.6. Now we're talking about factoring again in this lesson. And we're talking about factoring for this specific lesson when we are in a very specific kind of a format. So the format that we're looking for is if we see x squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Now b could be any number, c could be any number, but the big idea is that we do not have a coefficient for our x squared term. So what we are going to do is we are going to have a specific method to undo the foiling that took place to get this as our answer. So that's what factoring is. So what we do is step 2 already is to make sure that we have a t-chart. So what we do is we look for the factors of c. So things that multiply to make c are what we're looking to have happen. So we're just going to make a list of things that multiply to make c, and we're going to call them m comma p. And then what we're going to do is after we find out things that multiply to make c, we're going to add those two factors together to see if they can make the b for us. And then that's going to make our new binomials, because we'll have an x in the front, we'll have m and p at the end. So realistically, to make it as simple as possible, what multiplies to make a c but adds together to make the b is what we're looking for. All right, so if we look at our numbers here, so we're asking ourselves the question, what multiplies to make a 12 but adds to make a 7? So if I just go through this really quickly, I could do 12 and 1. Those obviously do not add to make 7, so I'm going to cross them off. 6 and 2, those do not multiply or add together to make a 7. The obvious one is 4 and 3, they add to make a 7. So what we will do is our factored answer, to make the x squared, we have to have x in the front, but this 4 and 3 does make our 7. So that's our numbers that we're going to have a positive 4 and a positive 3 at the end, because if we were to go through and FOIL this, we end up with this answer. So these are the easier types of problems. So let's check out the next one. So we're checking in our heads after we make a t-chart what multiplies to make a 27, our c, and adds to make a negative 12. So we need to have things be negative in the middle. That means there's going to be probably 2 negatives for this to happen. So a multiply to make a 27, I think 9 and 3. But to make them be negative 12, because 9 and 3 makes a positive 12, they both have to be negative. So I can say safely x minus 9 and x minus 3, because negative times negative makes that positive 27 for my L. And I know that we're going to end up with a 9 times x, a negative 9 times x, and a negative 3 times x. So this is going to work out perfectly for us. Keeping it rolling. Maybe you want to hit pause, try this one without me, and see if you get the same stuff. So our job was to get a negative 18 and add up to be a 3. Now because the back one is negative, we're going to have one positive and one negative to make this happen. So one number is going to be bigger than the other one to make them be positive. Now I see a negative 6 and a positive 3 as an option. And when I add those together, I get a positive 3. So I'm going to actually say, a negative 3. We need to switch around my negative signs here. If I had this one be positive and the negative 3, then we would add to make a positive 3, and then we're good here, folks. So that means I have to have an x plus 6 for my positive 6, and then an x minus 3 to get my negative 3. See how this is working out, hopefully? All right, same idea. What multiplies to make a negative 20 and adds to make a negative 1? Again, because this is negative, we're going to have one of them is going to be positive, one of them is going to be negative. I just wrote ton of 1. That's kind of weird. One's positive, one's negative. So as we look at this carefully, I see a 1 and a 20, no. A 2 and a 10, no. Because this is a 1, they have to be really close together, so 4 and 5 are really close together. But to make a negative 1, the 5 has to be negative. So that makes a negative 1. Perfect. So then all we got to do is then write down this beautiful x plus 4, x minus 5. And just like before, if you switch the order of these two around, no big deal. It does not matter what order they're in because we can multiply in any order. All right, now how do we make it harder? Well, to be making it harder, we maybe don't put them in order to make them equal to 0, and then we say you have to solve. So if I wanted this to be something we could solve, I'd have to subtract 15 from both sides, so that I would have an x squared plus 2x minus, minus 15. I wrote my own work down wrong over here. Minus 15, and then equals to 0. And because of this is a negative 15 in my t-chart, I want to multiply to be a negative 15 and then add to be a positive 2. So I know that I'm going to have this setup. Because this is negative, I'm going to have x plus something and x minus something. Now my job is just to find. Now 5 and 3 are the only two numbers that are going to work for us. So we need to figure out which one has to be negative. To be a positive at the end, my bigger number 5 needs to be positive, and my smaller number 3 needs to be negative. And then there we go. That would be our work here. Same idea for this one. We got to subtract x's from both sides to get it so it equals to 0. So it's going to say x squared minus an x minus 20 equals to 0. And then we have ourselves, similar to the last problem, we're going to have x plus something, x minus something. Our t-chart says that we're going to multiply to make a negative 20, and we're going to add to make a negative 1. So when we do those things, we're going to have a 4 and a 5 again because they're close together. And just like last time, the negative number has to be bigger, because I think we did this problem before, and the positive number has to be smaller in order to be a negative 1. Now, because it says solve, let's go back to the solve step. Because it says solve, we have to then do our product of 0 property. So if we have the 0 product property, that means that these multiply together to make a 0. I have to solve each one of these equations. And x minus 3 equals 0. When I solve them, x is equal to a negative 5, and x is equal to a positive 3. So these are the two solutions when we solve them. Remember, they're the roots of our problem where they cross the y-axis. All right, let's do the same thing on this one. This will be our last one. So we have x plus 4 equals 0, and x minus 5 equals 0. So x is equal to a negative 4, and x is equal to a positive 5 by adding and subtracting over here. So those are my two answers, and that's what we got going on. Now the one problem I'm going to ask you guys to see if you can figure out on your own, and then we'll talk about it in class, is this one. So it says that Marion wants to build a new art studio that has 3 times the area of her old studio by increasing the length and width of the old studio by the same amount. What should the dimensions of the new studio be? So we'll check this one out first things when class starts tomorrow, and do your best. Think of what we have been doing to see if you can make this work out for you folks. All right, this is the Burma Nation. We're just asking you to try things out, and we'll figure things out if you're confused. It's all good in the hood or in the Burma Nation.